Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tuesday after a nice long weekend. And I think the topic of recreation plays really well into our weekends, and hope everyone got out and enjoyed and had fun this weekend. So this is the first of our WISTEC trainings for 2023. And I'm excited to welcome Molly Kimmel from Montana and Calvin Richtig from Green Bay to talk about accessible outdoor recreation. So a little bit of housekeeping. This training is being recorded and it will be archived and uploaded to the WISTEC YouTube channel. We are using the webinar platform, which means that your cameras are off and you are muted. We do encourage you to use the chat and the Q&A for any questions. And both Molly and Calvin are very open and happy for interaction and some questions throughout today's session. This will be a 2-hour session, and it is sponsored by WISTEC, Wisconsin's Assistive Technology Program, which is part of the Bureau of Aging and Disability Resources, which is part of Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And we are excited to bring you some continuing education units and CRCs, or Certified Rehab Counselor credits. And those will be available to those who complete the survey and indicate that they are interested in receiving those CEUs and CRCs. We do have closed captioning available, and it's also available via stream text. And I will put that link into the chat once more for those of you who have joined after that. And you're welcome to pin the interpreters. But aside from that, I am going to turn this over to Molly and Calvin, and I will let you folks do your introductions. And welcome. Very excited to have you here sharing this information today.
Thank you so much, Laura. I am thrilled to be here and thrilled to see such a wonderful audience for this presentation on the Tuesday morning after a long holiday weekend. I realized after we scheduled that we might have a little holiday hangover. So great to see so many folks here. And I'm really excited to be presenting on this topic that I am very passionate about and sharing some resources with you all. So we will jump in, and the first thing I would appreciate is for anyone who is interested to go ahead and connect to Poll Everywhere. I like as much interaction as possible in my presentations, so we are going to use Poll Everywhere. Please feel free to put things in the chat, put things in the question and answer. Calvin and I will be doing some back and forth. Laura might interrupt me with a question. I am very flexible, so let's make this fun and engaging on this morning. So you're going to open a new page if you're on a computer at pollev.com/MollyKimmel810. Or if you have a phone, you can text Molly Kimmel 810 to 22333. This will just allow us to do a little back and forth on a few questions throughout this presentation. You can skip the username where it asks, and Laura put that in the chat for you all as well. This will also be on the first page of every Poll Everywhere question. So give you just a couple more seconds to do that, and then we'll move on to some introductions. So who are we?
And Molly, I'm sorry, this is Laura. There's a kind of a black shading over the left half of your
Is that better?
Oh yeah. It was just, it must have been.
It was my video channel. It was me watching myself. So now we're good. Thank you. No. Okay, so as Laura mentioned, my name is Molly Kimmel. I am an occupational therapist first and foremost, and my job title is program director at Montech, which is Montana's version of WISTEC and our assistive technology program throughout the state. I say I'm a Montanan there. That's been for the last 12 years, but I'll always be an Oregonian at heart. So that said, I'm happy to be an adopted Montanan. And what is special about this place to me is that outdoor recreation is such an integral part of me and all of my friends and family and colleagues' lives. So 95% of residents report that outdoor recreation is important to their quality of life. 87% of people here in Montana call themselves outdoor recreation enthusiasts, and 72% of households use trails every year. We have 33 million acres of public lands, which sounds like a lot, but on the next slide, you will see what that actually amounts to. And we beat y'all on rivers with 170,000 miles, but you've got us beat on lakes. So we have 3,200 lakes and reservoirs. Economically, outdoor rec is really important to our population as it brings in $7.1 billion in consumer spending and supports 71,000 jobs. So a little bit about me, and you can see me and my partner and our dog Clark, who we like to take kayaking. He is not a very good swimmer, so he really does need that life jacket on, but he loves being on the back of the kayak with us. As I mentioned, that 33 million acres of public land actually only translates to about 29% of the state. So that is enough to rank us as 11th in the country when it comes to the amount of public land available. But when you look at what it actually amounts to, it's not that much of our very large state. And I will pass it along to Calvin to introduce himself.
Thank you, Molly. So I put this slide in and I wanted to put some contrasting information here. When Molly and I met originally, I was kind of intrigued by those numbers. It was hard for me to relate. So I did a little bit of digging and I found the data that I've got shared on this page. I think we all saw huge growth in people accessing the outdoors during COVID. So that's what I was trying to show here a little bit with the gross domestic product rise. Outdoor rec grew by 14.1% overall, while the standard overall GDP grew by 4.6, just kind of showing that the interest in things related to outdoor rec certainly grew at a rate higher than everything else. Outdoor rec economy contributed $8.7 billion. Again, I just kind of wanted to show that in contrast to what Montana is doing. More than 22 million visitors enjoyed state parks in 2021. That was a pretty impressive number, an increase of 26%, which again, I think we all saw that during COVID. It was difficult to even get in. One of the other things I wanted to point out, and Molly and I kind of discovered this as well, she's going to refer to a lot of national parks in the Montana area, and we don't have as much of that. I think the state parks is more of the public land that we use here. So 95% Wisconsinites, again, that was just according to this poll that I had found. 5.9 million acres of public land, which is about 17% of our state. 84,000 miles of river, and we've got 15,000 lakes.
Thanks, Calvin. Any guesses? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you want. I think that 17% of public land puts you kind of in the middle of the states, but there is a state that is 79% public land. And that puts them at #1 for the US. So if anybody has any guesses on what state that is, I was incorrect on my guess. Laura says Texas. Andrew gets it right away. Nevada. Well done. Apparently nobody wants to live in the desert, so it's all public land. Good job, Andrew. So what is outdoor recreation? I think it's always important to start with a definition. And I pulled this one from some of the reading I did. Can be defined as an activity that occurs in a natural setting, requires some physical exertion, is undertaken for pleasure, and may include structured and unstructured activities in natural, urban, or man-made settings. So when I read that, I think that is incredibly broad, and that is a lot of activity. And when we talk about making all of that activity accessible, that is a big, big job. But it helps ground us to what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the morning. And so for you all out there, if you were able to connect to Pull Everywhere, this is just going to build us a little word cloud to say, what is your favorite outdoor recreation activity? And so as you enter that in, we will see what people like to do. Hiking and kayaking and swimming, nice. So a lot of water-based fishing, geocaching. Oh, that's a fun one. Bicycling, photography, absolutely. I see camping in the chat as well. Good. Being on the beach. We don't have beach in Montana, but we have Flathead Lake. And if you haven't been to Flathead Lake, you have to come and visit. It's beautiful. Excellent. Mountain biking. And cross-country skiing. Yeah, I don't see any winter activities yet. Do you all hide as much as we do in Montana for winter activities? Cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, golf. Me too. There's some of my people. I love that. Good. I think we have some pieces. Ice skating, I see, and snowmobiling. Great. Some pieces of equipment that we'll talk about later this morning that will associate with a lot of these activities. So I want you to take this information into your head. Frisbee, good addition, and snowshoeing. And I want you to say, if you think about if you had low vision, how easy or hard would it be to participate in your favorite activity that you just listed? So would it be very easy, a little bit challenging, hard, and would require adaptations, or nearly impossible? And this just helps us get in the scope of when we think about outdoor recreation and making it inclusive, what are the challenges we face? If it was very easy to participate in these activities, if you were low vision, then we wouldn't have to be having this presentation, right? But I'm seeing in the chat a lot of B's and C's. We're definitely, the primary audience is saying it would be hard and would require adaptations, with other people weighing in that it might be a little challenging and it might be nearly impossible. Thank you all for participating. I appreciate that. This is really good information for me. This is my second time doing this talk on this presentation, so I'm always collecting data. This is good for us. All right. So lots of text on this one, but let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about why is outdoor recreation for people with disabilities important? And according to the CDC, adults with disabilities are 3 times more likely to have chronic conditions like heart disease or diabetes, but they're also more likely to be physically inactive, have obesity, and have less access to healthcare. So if we can create opportunities for adaptive and inclusive outdoor recreation, then what are the potential benefits? And I did a lot of research in preparation for this talk, and what I found was that there was very little negative impact to good participation in outdoor recreation. What it was significant improvements and increases in a lot of personal factors like building feelings of empowerment and improving quality of life. But there was also that social piece that we're going to talk a lot about, that it improves social adjustment and social functioning and relationship building when people are able to access the outdoors. And then there was even another layer that was really interesting, that an improved being outdoors gave people this improved sense of resource stewardship and a greater respect for the outdoors, which means we're going to take care of it longer, which is important for all of us being able to access it. One other study I read said something about physical activity and recreation have been shown to improve wellness, and these benefits were amplified when the activity is performed outdoors. So even when we can get outside in the winter, that can be really beneficial for everyone. I pulled up this little Mental Floss article just to show that not only for people with disabilities, but for all of us, being outdoors is important. It boosts your energy. It feels easier to exercise when you're outdoors. This one was really interesting. Research shows that elementary school students who spend more time outdoors are less likely to develop nearsightedness. I guess we're staring at trees instead of our phones when we're outside. Can mitigate pain and boost your immune system, provide you with free aromatherapy, of course, enhances creativity, helps with seasonal affective disorder, which for us northern states, we can absolutely agree is a thing, and gives you your daily dose of vitamin D, restores your focus, and all around makes us better people. So I appreciated that article. And more specifically, these were specific studies I found on specific outdoor rec activities, just that a walk in nature leads to decreased blood pressure compared to walking in a city. And there was a really cool adaptive surf program where participants increased their endurance and strengthened their grip. Kids with mild to moderate CP tried rock climbing and it improved their muscle strength. And again, that social component of young people with autism who began helping others and teaching their peers new skills after exposure to outdoor recreation. All right, obviously, tons of benefits, but in order to get those benefits, we have to overcome some barriers. So just a quick video part of it to hear from some folks about what kind of barriers they have experienced to participating in outdoor recreation. Give me a thumbs up.
What is my relationship with the outdoors? Well, see, I mean, I grew up camping. It was something that our family did together, and so there's a lot of memories that just kind of get rooted in that.
Yeah, so I've always been a big outdoorsman, hiking, camping, fishing, hunting.
It's like the sanctuary, it's when I get really stressed and life is overwhelming, you can just go outside.
Getting that fresh air and that wind in your face, and
just the stress release of experiencing nature, its beauty and the birds. It's visceral. Like I can feel my stress drop when I'm in nature.
I love being outdoors. I don't get the opportunity to do it as much as I'd like to. We're supposed to be the outdoor capital of the world pretty much in the Pacific Northwest. And when you're in a wheelchair, it's not. It's not.
The injury made things just more difficult.
My wife complains sometimes because she's like, I have to do everything. I have to set up the tent. I'm your Sherpa,
I mean, there's a lot more planning. You can't, I can't wake up in the morning and just be like, hey, I'm just going to go camping.
For me, I would just have to say I need power for my power chair. So it's like a big one, and then hard pack ground.
Someone like me, they don't really access the outdoors as much, so there's a lot of things that I have to learn and that I haven't learned yet.
Then, there's
Apologies.
additional equipment and stuff like that.
My experience of the outdoors after my spinal cord injury has just been one of, honestly, kind of disappointment. I used to be an avid hiker, backcountry hiker with some college buddies, and it's been 5 years since my spinal cord injury, and I haven't been able to join them.
I think a lot of people crave it. They write it off as that's something they can't do, and it's really sad. I think the barriers that a lot of people experience in accessing outdoors are really just kind of the way society views it, and they're kind of told that they can't access it, and the fact they don't see other people out there doing it, it's this perception that they're not capable anymore just because they have a physical disability.
I miss being able to be outdoors and have that experience. So coordinating with the
I
organization.
really like that video, especially what she said at the end, which is some of it is just the way society views it and that there isn't access to it. People don't think we can do it. And that's what I heard a lot when I was an occupational therapist and I was working with people immediately after injury, is they think, This means I can't go fishing anymore. This means I can't go rock climbing anymore. This means I can't do those activities that I love and enjoy doing outside of my regular day-to-day activities that I have to do. And so I appreciate all of you being here today, because part of this is building capacity to say, yes, you can. Yes, we can. Yes, we have work to do to overcome some of these barriers, but that's what we have to do to make sure people feel included and welcome. So as I was doing, this is the boring part, right? There's the research again, but it's important to think about what are the constraints and how can we organize those so that we can address them. So we have things that are a little bit more intrapersonal, that are with me about why I don't think I can participate in adaptive recreation. It might be that I'm going to get totally overstimulated, that I'm terrified of trying this, that it feels too challenging, that it feels too physical, or that I just don't have the information about what's going on and what I could be doing. And this is a small list, but this is a lot of what came out of the literature. Interpersonally, so again, back to that social component, a lot of times communication needs might prevent participation, or it might be an intimidating social requirement where maybe you're used to doing these activities with your family and now you have to do this with strangers. That's intimidating for all of us. Sometimes there can be a focus on competition instead of collaboration, and then also just a lack of representation. So again, if society doesn't see people with disabilities participating in these events, it's harder for them to go and do that. So if we can have more representation, we're in good shape. And finally, structurally, this is what we're going to talk about a lot. How can we change the structure of these activities, whether it be the activity themselves, the access to that activity, or the access to equipment to do that activity? And then, of course, we have transportation limitations, potentially cost limitations, processes that might be confusing, or inaccessibility of sites. I think I read somewhere that inadequate facilities prevented the inclusion of over 1/3 of people with disabilities. So how do we change these constraints into facilitators? So we need to develop this culture that contests these barriers and focuses on facilitators. So this is sort of my vision of a strengths-based approach, right? How can we, like we're doing today, provide knowledge of health benefits and other benefits to participation? How can we make these activities feel fun and exciting and interactive, and modeling that success and joy and happiness and endorphin rush that we all feel after an activity like this? How can we make sure that program staff are trained in inclusive and diverse practices and outreach, so that we can bring everybody together and promote opportunities for social interaction that don't feel intimidating, so that we're building a community? Obviously, we need to start with accessibility in mind. So anytime we're building something, having that idea of universal design, so that we're building for everyone and not excluding anyone. And knowing resources. So that's what we're here to do. Share a lot about resources so that we all can learn from each other. I do not want anybody to hesitate to reach out after this presentation and say, remind me where you got that piece of equipment, or tell me more about this activity. We need to share these resources widely. So when we do that, then we have the chance to have great successes in the realm of adaptive recreation. And if you don't know Steve Wampler, he's a great one to follow on social media. He lives, I think, in California, and is an engineer, and he runs an adaptive rec camp for kids with disabilities. He has cerebral palsy. And he did that because of his experience in an Easter Seals camp growing up and how amazing that was. So I'm just going to show a portion of this video where he did something pretty extraordinary.
My dream is to inspire kids to achieve what they want in life.
My husband has waited his whole life. He didn't know that he was going to be able to do anything like this. This came to him, this epiphany came to him, and he realized he could do something athletic. But not only was it athletic, it was as big as it gets.
El Cap to the normal climber is probably the pinnacle in a lot of people's climbing career, you know? People come from all around the world because it's kind of the proving grounds.
No one with more kind of physical challenges has ever even attempted to climb it.
You're looking up at almost an unachievable wall to surmount.
I've climbed plenty with able-bodied climbers, but it just seems like the disabled guy has to overcome the same obstacles as well as other diverse ones. He's getting about anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of pull per pull-up, and if you do the math, that's just inspiring.
I hadn't met Steve before, but I was pretty well briefed on his condition, and personally we just sort of, who is this guy, what's he doing? I put in a 10% success rate, probably 90% failure.
A California man is on his way to becoming the first person with cerebral palsy to climb Yosemite's El Capitan.
2 or 3 days into the trip, he looked at Dave and I and said, you know, this is the longest I've been out of my wheelchair ever.
You have disability. That's not gonna change. I don't care if you're mad about it. I don't care if you're sad about it. You're missing out on life.
So that is a documentary that folks can watch. This came from a TED Talk that he did about 10 years ago on the experience. And just to describe the video a little bit, Steve is in a device that he created, so he engineered, that allows him to be connected to the mountain and using ropes like climbers would, except he's doing a pull-up. So every time he's trying to ascend, he's doing a pull-up and moving 6 inches up the face of the biggest mountain you've ever seen. Not biggest, the steepest vertical ascent, right? And so if you watch the beginning part of this TED Talk, he describes how he practiced by doing 3,000 pull-ups a day in preparation for this, which is just wild to think about that. And then spent, I think, 5 or 7 days out of his wheelchair camping on the mountain, getting ready for the next day, and just pulling himself up 1 inch at a time. So really cool to see that. So just to wrap up the research portion of things before we get into the meat of what's out there in the world, I read one great article about fishers with disabilities. And, obviously, like I said before, people with disabilities are avid fishers. It does not go away just because we have a disability. And what they found in this study was that recreational fishing offered more benefits and different benefits to people with disabilities than those without. But they also faced more constraints, as we've talked about, interpersonal and intrapersonal constraints. But despite being confronted with those challenges, those constraints were overcome with regular fishing. Practice makes perfect. And the benefits that the people with disabilities got were greater than those without disabilities. So they were able to successfully negotiate those constraints and develop or maintain a fishing lifestyle that didn't differ from people without disabilities. So really nice to see that just as a case study to pull it all together about what we're talking about. So now comes the fun part of what are we doing about it? So what? So Montech and people in Montana, some of this is going to be Montana specific. We're going to get Calvin in to talk about Wisconsin as well. But I don't want you to think of this as, oh, that's something we can't do because it's only in Montana. This is a blueprint. This is a guideline. This is so we can all share and learn from each other so that we can build this network more successfully. So here in Montana, we are lucky to have a small population. So we connect really easily with different programs and are able to communicate well with localized direct service programs. At our assistive technology program, we've done some specific inventory adjustments and programmatic changes on this topic. And then we're going to talk about government initiatives and sort of federal level things that are happening in accessibility in outdoor recreation. Lots of links in this presentation. So when Laura sends it out afterwards, click away. For example, I have a link to our website, which is organized by category. So you can come down to recreation and you can go straight to hunting and you can see everything that we have. So feel free to look around. Anything that we do have tells you how much it cost and where we got it from, so that it's things that are accessible to everybody. So very importantly, I hope all 68 of you can answer this question. Do you know where your state AT program is housed and have you used its services? I'm guessing we're going to get a lot of yeses here, but don't be ashamed if you don't know. That is a-okay. That's what we're here to talk about so that we can share these resources. I've got an A from Catherine. It's split pretty evenly. A C from Cheryl. Great. This just helps me know how much I should explain about these programs. Good. Primarily, yes, I know where it is and I have used it. With a little bit, I've never used it. So here's your poll to use it. And no, I don't know where it is. Every state and territory has an assistive technology program, and we are all tasked with being able to provide free access to equipment and assistive technology to anybody with a disability in our service area. So all of the things I'm going to talk about when it comes to equipment are available to any Montanan with a disability, and Calvin and WizTech are building a great inventory as well of adaptive recreation equipment that can be available. We also do trainings like this one right here, and technical assistance and consultations and help to overcome any financial barriers and do a lot of other pretty cool stuff. So if you are not familiar with your state AT program, do seek us out. And then just for fun to see again, resource sharing. Can you name a local or statewide accessible recreation location, feature, or provider in your area? And if you can't, that's okay. Just put nope. And then after this presentation, you'll be able to say, yep. Great. And Laura put the WizTech address in the chat, and I will do the same here. Sorry, no, then you're in the right place. That's awesome. Polar Andrea State Park, Blaze Sports, Rail Trails. Yes, I actually have Rail Trails linked. Ooh, nice emoji at the bottom of the presentation because I just found that and it's incredible. Mirror Lake State Park has an accessible cabin, Ability 360. Maine Adaptive Sports and Recreation, you all put out great information in Maine. Good stuff. We'll send out the results of all of these polls as well so people can have access to them. Tracy's putting in a link for the Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin called Open Outdoors, Redwood National Park. Awesome. Canoeing and fishing. Good. Keep adding to this. I want to see them. Let's build a network, a database where we can refer back and go on lots of adventures together. All right, I think we are in good shape there. So again, lots of links in here, and this just gives you an idea of the types of activities that are offered in Montana, as well as some of the service providers. And so each of these are clickable and you can learn more about them. Each of them are amazing and wonderful and can be a good blueprint for other direct service providers elsewhere. So for example, Camp Bullwheel is on the Madison River, and it is a little camp, and the owner of the camp guarantees that if you come visit, you will catch a fish. It does not matter what disability you have, you will catch a fish, and he has not been wrong yet. That is free to anybody in Montana with a disability. You just have to get on their list pretty early. Dream Adaptive is up here in the northwest corner, providing winter and summer recreation opportunities. Eagle Mount has 3 locations that do a lot of adaptive skiing in the winter and other activities in the summer. Of course, we have Special Olympics and we have camps in the summertime for our Parks and Rec department. The Helena Miners is a really cool sled hockey association, so they're always willing to talk to more folks who are interested in doing sled hockey and having adaptive sleds. I'll talk a little bit more about the Montana Bow Hunters Association in a moment. And then Beaver Creek Rendezvous is a camp in eastern Montana that focuses on people who are hunting. Project Airtime is based in Utah, but if you can get them to your neighborhood, I highly recommend it. I have some pictures on the next slide of some folks paragliding. And then Empower SCI is specifically a camp for people with spinal cord injury. They have a 2-week camp in New York and a 1-week camp in Montana focused on recreation, and that is their model. So you can see with a lot of these that they're very specific. They might be specific to disability, they might be specific to activity, and so they are incredibly important to know about so we can make the right referrals. But for example, here's my buddy Abby, who got to go paragliding off the top of our mountain right here in town, so we all got to go watch and see her take off from the mountain and then land in this cool adapted chair. And another example, as I mentioned, Camp Bullwheel. This is Peter, who I talked about, who is a former engineer from Craig Hospital. And I'm just going to show you this video of the quad stick. If you're not familiar with the quad stick, it has a purpose that is not adaptive recreation outside, but is for adaptive gaming primarily. So if we look at the video, you can see what folks can do. Maybe. There we go. With the quad stick. So this is going to show multiple people who have high-level quadriplegia or tetraplegia who are using this device that has, I think, 4 inputs where you can sip, you can puff, and you can move them up, down, right, or left. You can toggle, and then it has a couple other buttons if it ever stops buffering. So we'll see if we get to see it or not. But it allows them to play video games of all levels. So you can do the first person different games with all of the graphics and all of the fast moving things. I'm just going to refresh that and see if that'll start. It looks like my computer is a little bogged down. We'll see if we get anywhere. Nope. So know that the quad stick is a great device for adaptive gaming. Allows people to use just their mouth to play any video game. It's actually manufactured here in Great Falls, Montana. So little shout out there. But what Peter did as an engineer is he was able to adapt the quad stick to a fishing pole so that this guy right here could catch a fish using just his mouth. So really incredible piece of assistive technology right there that had an off-shelf use when we get a little creative. Montana Bow Hunters Association we have a specific permit that allows people with disabilities to modify their bows during bow season. And they have a person on staff who is same philosophy as Peter. If you want to get an animal with your bow, we will adapt it so you're able to do so. And he has this lovely picture of someone sitting in a snowstorm, pulling back the bow with their mouth, totally covered in snow, but eager to go out and get their animal. So where there's a will, there is a way. And I'm going to pass it over to Calvin and let you chat a little bit about some of the Wisconsin opportunities that exist.
Thank you, Molly. I want to talk about a couple of things, and then I realized in my intro, I went over really quickly what I am for those that don't know me. I'm an assistive technology specialist at an independent living center based out of Green Bay, with a focus on adaptive recreation. So my father was injured in a motorcycle accident, C5, C6 quadriplegic as a result of that. Prior to that, I was raised in a very outdoorsy lifestyle, grew up in the country with a little farmette. You know, we had land up north, did a lot of hiking, fishing, camping. After his injury, we couldn't do any of that stuff anymore. There weren't resources available. You know, our family didn't have any exposure to disability prior. I was extremely naive to any of the resources. You know, so there wasn't a lot readily available. So this has been, you know, a very personal mission for me, is to expose opportunities so that nobody else has to go through that, because the dynamics of our relationship really changed. And his personal, you know, him not being able to do a lot of those hobbies. So, I'm not extremely surprised to see that there's a lack of knowledge of what resources are available. Although certainly bummed out, because I wish that we all knew about these. And quite honestly, I think there's not a ton of them. So we've kind of taken a role to create some of these where they don't exist. As far as where the AT programs are housed, WisTech does house the Wisconsin AT program, and the funds are sent out through partners throughout the state, including the independent living centers. So we at Options for Independent Living have put a very large focus on the adaptive rec piece. So I just kind of wanted to share some of the things that we're doing here, and then I'd like to share kind of a list of some of the resources in our 17 county area. So I kind of dove into this a little bit more heavily last year. We started applying for funds because we know this equipment's expensive, right? The quad stick that Molly just showed, and you know, the track chairs and all the equipment that we've seen in the videos, and people alluded to it in that video earlier. You know, there's the need for specialized equipment, and it's expensive. So that right there is a barrier for most people. They don't know what it's going to take to get going, and even if they do know what it's going to take, they're just not sure if it's something that's going to work for them. So last year, in the year 2022, we started writing for grants specifically for an adaptive rec program. So I wrote for $50,000 in grant funds, so that we could start acquiring equipment that would be available for people in our area to use for free. Since then, we've acquired an action track chair. That was about a $13,000 purchase with an enclosed trailer. So that's available for anybody in our area to use. No cost for it. The concept is pick up the chair and take it wherever you please. If you've got property, if you've got land up north, if you've got a nice yard you want to use, if you want to go camping with your family, you're able to pick it up and go do with it whatever you'd like. Our typical time is about 2 weeks. And then bring it back. And we're finding people are getting exposed to these opportunities when they're able to use that equipment. Some might decide it's not for them. Some might decide, you know, I only need it a couple times a year. I don't have somewhere to store it, or I don't have use for it the rest of the year. I'll just use that one. And a lot of other folks they love it. They don't want to give it back to us. So they've tracked down funding and purchased their own, you know, and then it just opens a lot of doors for them. We purchased a Freedom Tracks. So the action track chair, Molly, I think, has a slide coming up, and you'll see what that is for those that aren't familiar. The Freedom Tracks is a power base so that somebody can roll onto it with a manual wheelchair. and it's got a little portable joystick that you'd be able to put on your manual chair. So that's a little bit more portable, a little bit more feasible for somebody to get outdoors without having to trailer a big separate track device. We purchased a Firefly last year, which is a kind of a scooter front end attachment that would go onto a manual wheelchair. I've got a colleague who introduced me to that. He bikes with his son about 18 miles per trip. So in his manual chair, he can bike with his son a little bit, but this really opens up the opportunities for him. We had an upright trike was donated to us. A recumbent trike was one of our big grants that we wrote. So it's a recumbent trike with electronic assist and just about every adaptive piece that we could get with it. And then we'll customize it per user. So if somebody's had a stroke or limited use of their limbs, I've got a youth with junior rheumatoid arthritis who can pedal for a ways, but kind of starts to lock up, and his parents are having to carry him home because he can't make it. So the electronic assist can help with that. Or if you just run out of energy or you can't make it back, you can just press the button and drive it back. So it opens up the ability for people to go further than they thought possible. We've got a lot of various fishing equipment. And then we are kind of working a little bit on some ball sports equipment as well. I'm not going to get too much into that with this presentation here today. And then we're just have a continuous wish list as well. Adaptive kayak or paddleboard is something that we're looking for. A terrain hopper is another outdoor wheelchair that we're looking to acquire, and a hand cycle. Through the WISTech funds, we allocate about $5,000 a year for that, just on adaptive equipment. So that's in addition to the $50,000 in grant funds that my goal would be to do each year. And then, what do we do with all that stuff? It's a lot of collaboration with other organizations. Our track chair right now is at the Green Bay Botanical Gardens, which is not too far from us, but they're so they've got scooters available, but they can't go in the wood chip areas of the gardens. So with the track chair, they've been able to get people access to the entire gardens. And that's been really neat because people are seeing that wouldn't otherwise know that that's available. And we've gotten a lot of good exposure and more people learning about that as well. So that's some of the stuff that we've done in the last calendar year to help promote more opportunities for adaptive rec. Molly, I've got more I can share here about other opportunities. Do you want me to keep going with some of that, or do you want to hop in here for a little bit?
Hop in, go for it.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to kind of, Molly gave us the opportunity to share some of this. So I've kind of put together a list of some of the things that I've worked with. So I saw somebody mentioned the website for the DNR. I was happy to see that. So I'm actually on the Disability Advisory Council for the DNR. And I'm not sure if all of you are even aware that we have a Disability Advisory Council. So there's about 8 of us members, primarily people with disabilities. We've got a range of vision loss, mobility, all sorts of, we're looking for a member with hearing loss to address programmatic policy type things in state parks as well. But so we've done a lot to kind of promote opportunities within the state parks. Our big win lately was, how do we promote this? So we started putting together an inventory of accessible features that they've now added to their website. So if you've noticed, that's new within the past, I think 2 years, where you can actually go and find out what kind of accessible opportunities there are, because otherwise we just don't know what we're getting into. And I know that's one of the biggest barriers, is people aren't sure what they're going to run into, so they avoid it. So within the state parks, Peninsula State Park in Fish Creek, Door County, has an accessible lookout tower. That's a big one. I hope that most of you are aware of that. If you're not, Peninsula is my personal favorite. I'm there if I can make it every weekend, if not every other, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So the tower was in disrepair, so they had to make it ADA compliant. There were some options that they came up with, and the route right now is a ramp that goes all the way up to, I believe it's a 70-foot tower. So it's kind of a nature hike ramp thing that goes through the woods up to the top. So that's kind of a very original for its kind. There's adapted kayaks at some of the state parks, Buckhorn Council Grounds, Devil's Lake, Peril State Park. There's beach wheelchairs at Big Bay, Buckhorn, Harrington Beach, Kohler Andre, Whitefish Dunes. There's cross-country sit skis available. Maybe in lieu of time, I'll skip the names of all these parks, but it's all listed on that DNR website. Cabins, there's 10 accessible cabins scattered throughout the state park. So we're working on trying to add some more of those. They're a little bit complicated to get into, but they are available. And accessible playgrounds. Peninsula just added accessible playground equipment as well. High Cliff has a beautiful accessible playground. And then we've got partnerships through some of our county parks have done really neat things as well. So in Brown County here, we have Barkhausen as a county park. They have their own action track chair as well, which is just there on site available. And for some people, they don't have the ability to come pick up our trailer and take it somewhere. So it's just there. You can go there and use it. You can explore their trails. And then they also have a dementia-friendly trail that they've created. So it's kind of a shorter route. Family members can kind of see the entire trail. So if a loved one wants to go explore the trail independently, they're able to, but family can kind of safely see where they're going. It's got interactive pieces. So we worked with them on creating some of those features. Marinette County created an event last year called Wheel Hike Together. We were really excited to be part of that, and that's going to be happening again this year. We had, I want to say it was 8 track chairs available at their parks, and we had people make reservations for like 30-minute blocks or 1-hour blocks over the course of 7 days. And I was just ecstatic to see that every single one of those things was reserved for the entire time. So we just had like one after another families and people coming to explore county parks, many of which had never been able to do that or hadn't been able to in a long time. So we're going to be working with them to do that again this year. Calumet County has an awesome Calumet Cares Accessible Adventures Guide, and I've never seen anything like that. It's the coolest thing ever. So it lists some of the opportunities that they have within their county. And as we all know, we can use the term accessible, but that doesn't, apply to everybody. So what I love that they've done with this Calumet Cares Adventure Guide is it explains what it is and how it relates to, cognitive impairment, how it might relate to somebody with vision loss, what's available for somebody with physical limitations. So it explains in depth so that you're not just, it's not a one size fits all, as we know. And then I'm just going to list off here some of the organizations or programs that we work with. I've been involved with some of these, or we partner with some of these. Challenge the Outdoors. There's an organization, Fishing Has No Boundaries, Adaptive Sportsman, North American Squirrel Association. So those are all organizations that do a lot of fishing, hunting, hiking events. They will welcome people with disabilities to join the events, or they can do individual things as well. They do, they'll help fund adventures as well. So if there's a cost involved in trips, they've got some funding available. So you're participating in these events that you didn't otherwise maybe think were possible, and they'll have able-bodied guides. They'll have things lined up. They've got meals in place. But when I've seen these things, it's the networking is by far the coolest thing. So I tried really hard to get my father involved in some of these, just because it's a lot of other people with similar interests, with similar fears that are all getting together, and you're kind of seeing everybody overcome it together. Moving Mountains is a downhill ski program. It's I can't really claim that one for Wisconsin. That's in Iron Mountain, Michigan, but they've got an awesome adaptive ski program there. We donated one of our sit skis. We have here an organization, My Team Triumph. We have a sailing club here that does adaptive sailing classes. That's Green Bay Sail and Paddle. We have Bay Nordic Ski Club, does an adaptive cross-country ski clinic. We've got a couple water ski organizations, Waterboard Warriors and the Shawano Ski Sharks, that do adaptive ski clinics. They either have their own separate events, or oftentimes they'll just have a break in between, like an intermission for their shows, where they'll welcome people with disabilities to come and try out some of their equipment. So they've got people who are knowledgeable on skiing in the water with you, kind of teaching you how to use this equipment, and obviously the equipment is there for you. Spine Core Foundation is an awesome group of people that puts together really neat opportunities. Water skiing, they've done skydiving, downhill skiing. They did a Subaru ice course where they had Subarus with adaptive driving controls on them, and they were on these like slide out ice tracks. So just really cool things. So they've got people together that want to fund these opportunities, and they welcome people to come and participate. So you just kind of get to like show up and experience some of this stuff. So and that's just kind of what I've whipped together in the past week or so off the top of my head. So I wanted you all to kind of think about that as how it relates to what's available in your areas, you know, and you know, we've got a AT for All as our inventory program for the equipment piece. But, you know, it would be cool to put together a neat resource for some of these different organizations. And I think, you know, maybe that's something as a state that we could benefit from, is keeping track of all of these different things. So Molly, I'll pass it back to you.
What a perfect segue, Calvin. Thank you for sharing all that information. I do have to admit, when you sent me the North American Squirrel Association, I was a little concerned that maybe people in Wisconsin squirrel watch instead of bird watch, but that's just the name, not what they do. So yeah, really cool overview of equipment available, direct service providers, and places that have access. And that's really important because, oh, I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to just tell you, it takes 12 hours to get from the western side of Montana to the eastern side of Montana with stops. You could do it in 10, but you would not be able to stop. So I'm calling 12. And so what that means with some of these direct service providers is that we have significant challenges when it comes to being able to get there. And I appreciate Laura put some local resources in the chat as well, because these opportunities exist, but if we don't know about them, we can't tell somebody in northeastern Montana that yes, there is an opportunity for you to go skiing. You just need to know that it exists. But for someone maybe who wants to for example, do adaptive paddleboarding, and they're in southeast Montana and the only opportunity is here in Missoula, that's not realistic for getting them here. So some of these direct service opportunities have participant restrictions or activity restrictions. We have a new nonprofit starting here, and they're wrestling with who do we serve and what activity do we focus on to start with. And my recommendation to them was be very clear in your planning so that other places can use this as a learning tool, can see what hurdles you've already overcome so that they know what they can do when they plan. But timing can get in the way of being able to participate in some of these activities. If you're away the week that the camp is happening, then you miss out. So how can we both cross-refer so we all know what exists, maybe have a centralized database as Calvin mentioned, and how do we make sure that we have equitable access to these activities for all the people in our areas? So one of the things that we do here in Montana is partner with our Centers for Independent Living, much like you do there, and host a lot of adaptive rec clinics where we're sharing this information. And we invite vendors to come and bring all their equipment so people can play. We always have a wonderful turnout for our Missoula ADA picnic and adaptive rec clinic. If you're interested in this, start following your city or your county homepages and show up when there's visioning meetings about parks, about different build outs, about different places, so that we can have an accessible voice in those planning sessions. And I just highlight Marshall Mountain right here, where I sat in on a 3-hour conversation about what did we want to turn this old ski mountain into now that the city owns it. And they have come up with an adaptive bike directional trail, which is inclusive. It's not just for people with disabilities, it's for everyone to use, but will be adaptive, which is really nice. And I invite all my staff to participate in these same conversations, so that, again, I keep coming back to building capacity. And then, of course, we have to cross borders, which is what we're doing here today. So I just really want to appreciate and throw out to folks in different states across the country who I've connected with to have these conversations, so that we're all on board and we have this shared goal and this shared vision. And then this lovely picture of one of our tandem recumbent bikes going down Lake McDonald in Glacier National Park. Just next week, we're hosting an adaptive ride through the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier. So again, great opportunity to get out and see something incredibly beautiful. And we do that before the road opens up to cars. So fun. Yes, Laura, you are invited next year. Absolutely. It's 10 o'clock. So everybody, as I'm talking right now, make sure to take a deep breath, take a sip of water, stretch, do whatever you need to do to get through for the next hour. And please throw in any questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we're happy to answer them as we move through this next section, which is going to be my favorite part of any presentation. What's the equipment? So what are we using here at Montech to get people outside? In 2010, we had a wonderful colleague who was an avid hunter, and so he made it his focus to make sure that we had some equipment related to getting outside. He was a high-level quadriplegic, and so he founded our Montana Access to Outdoor Recreation Equipment, and was able to purchase a number of the things you see here, including a wheelchair accessible raft that goes out on our Montana rivers with Parks and Rec staff. This cool wheelchair right here, which is custom made to be a game carrier. So it has rugged wheelchair wheels and then a box at the bottom to carry out game. This trigger assist that uses bite to pull the trigger, an adaptive scope, a 3-wheeled walker that will go over anything, a bike trailer, etc. When I came on board in 2020, I started looking at it and I said, well, the GPS from 2010 is not really ready to go out and be used anymore. So how can we update our inventory? And I found, this is your cheat code. This is why you're here. I found a wonderful grant from Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's Foundation for $10,000 specifically to get special populations access to the outdoors. So highly encourage everybody check that out. And we use that money along with feedback from tons of disabled outdoor rec enthusiasts and experts to say, what do we need? We couldn't buy everything we wanted, but some examples of things that we got were stuff to be used on water, which we didn't have a ton of. So some adaptive life jackets, this PVC walker that can go into water and not be as rusty as a regular wheelchair. Something simple and low tech, like sensory friendly goggles, which we got for kids and adults. And then tons of options for fishing. This nice little, I think this is the Strike Fighter, which harnesses onto your body to allow your hands to be free. This is another slightly custom, but very doable. It's a switch adapted fishing reel. So it's a 1-finger cast, and then it's a switch with that battery pack on to reel it back one-handed and with that electronic assist. Another option for limited dexterity when holding a fishing pole. And then I want to show this video from Rex Fly, if it'll work, that shows this other one-handed fishing apparatus. And the reason I highlight that we don't sell anything, but I am going to tell you when there's a vendor who's incredibly helpful. We don't have a lot of people who are passionate about fishing on our staff. So when we reached out to RexFly and said, what should we buy? The owner was incredibly helpful in telling us what would be the most beneficial for our inventory. But just to show you how this RexFly works, I love it. This is one-handed fishing.
So what it is, see it's a converted ugly stick elite spinning rod. We've cut down the handle and put the RexFly adapter on there, so now it's locked on my chest. I push down with my heel and it comes right off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and grab my line. Now this one has a quick fire trigger. These things wear out, but that's great. You can just flip the bail over, pull it off, cast out there, stick it right back on here. And we're fishing a tube jig, so you really got to give this jig some action there. So I'm just kind of twitching with my body, reeling it in. And you can see it's, oh, fish chasing it right there. It just kind of dances back. Kind of just reeling, twitch it back. Fish chasing it right there. Oh. Chased it right in. There he is, twist. Oh yeah. And you can feel him. Loosen that drag a little bit. Tighten my drag. You can feel that fish right here on your chest. If I want, I can even. Ooh, see how it's locked on there? The fish isn't going anywhere. Nice one. Nice rainbow. Tighten the drag a little bit. Swing him in here. Oh, that is a fat fish. Look at that. Wow. It's probably a 4 or 5 pounder maybe. Swing him in here, right to the shallows.
I really like that video because that is a big fish to reel in, and that harness is very low profile. You would barely even know that somebody was wearing it, and it just has a little 3-inch connection point that the rod hooks onto, and that stays incredibly stable. So even when that guy was fighting that fish, it wasn't moving at all, which I just really think is pretty cool. And the nice thing about the RexFly is there are options for rod and reel fishing and fly fishing. So we have both options in our inventory. One of the things that we didn't have much of was things for paddling or kayaking or canoeing. So we purchased an an origami kayak, a foldable lightweight kayak that you don't have to expend a lot of energy to pump up like an inflatable, and you can carry, and it's a lot lighter than a regular kayak. And then there's a company called Creating Ability. I believe they're in your neck of the woods. I think they're in Minnesota. And they have all these different options for paddle attachments. So different ways to keep your hand on the paddle or give you a little bit more stability at the wrist. For this one here, you connect the base with frog tape to the bottom of your kayak, and it provides you a little steadiness for the paddle so that you don't have to support the full weight. And these very cool transfer benches to get into the kayak. Once you are in, this is a chariot, so the kayak can be pulled down to the water and you don't have to do that transfer in the water, which is really nice. And yeah, Laura's putting in, it almost seems like a GoPro chest holder, like yeah, absolutely. On land, we have some various options. So we wanted to make sure that somebody could go camping safely and using some of this equipment. So we purchased a tent that has this little vestibule where a wheelchair could sit outside of the tent and not take up room inside, but also not get rained on or be exposed to the elements. Along with that, we have a portable battery pack, which can charge CPAP machine, not for very long, CPAP machines use as much energy as a refrigerator. So I think it's 1 to 2 nights for this size battery pack, but we just had it go out with a family whose daughter uses an iPad for communication, and they just wanted to make sure while they were camping that they had a way to keep that iPad charged. If you want more information about some of those portable battery packs, the Colorado AT program is very invested in emergency preparedness and is purchasing many of these. And so they have done a ton of research on the best ones. And it's just nice to have a piece of equipment that does double duty. It can work in an emergency. It can work when you're going camping. We also have camping cots and tables and a little stove and all sorts of different items so that somebody could come to us and have a full experience. This is another low-tech device that attaches on to a white cane, and it's called the Dakota Disc. One of our advisory council members uses it when she goes hiking to help navigate larger obstacles. And then another hunting piece of equipment and a great vendor who was really excited to talk with us. This is for low vision hunting, so it expands the field of view. It's a shooting scope that is a bigger picture. And then I love these two. This is the wheel blades right here, which go on to the casters on a wheelchair and turn them into mini skis so that they can more easily navigate over ice and snow. Similarly, the Retire traction tires is a Velcro attachment to your wheelchair wheels that turns those slick tires into knobbies so that you can have better traction on different terrain. And Kellen mentioned, you know, we have some things for adaptive sports, and that's not what today is about, but I will just mention this cute little overcomer from Flag House, which allows kids to use a variety of different attachments to use a baseball bat, hit a tennis racket, hockey stick, golf club, using very little motion and energy on their end. Finally, all-terrain. This is the most fun. This is just a blast to get this equipment out. We have something like an Emma chair, which has these big balloon wheels that'll go over mud and sand and snow and actually float in a couple inches of water as well. The two things about the Emma is that it comes in sized. So you do have to choose small, medium, large, and it is attendant propelled. So the person in the wheelchair doesn't get a chance to move themselves forward. This snow sledge we bought during COVID, as you can see by our masks, and we had to have a little fun pretending we were out in the Alps with that. So our graphic designer did a little Photoshop to showcase this piece of equipment, and it allowed people to get outside during COVID, which was really nice. The HippoCamp wheelchair, similar to the Emma, can have big balloon tires to get over different terrain, but it also has ski attachments. And we have had 3 requests in the last month for this to go out during field trips at the end of the year. So really excited to be able to coordinate that with 3 different schools so that folks can get out and be on those field trips and not have to sit back at school. And finally, we have this little backpack. You can barely see it, but this is Zai Lee. And Zai was the youngest disabled person in the world to reach the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. So he is there with the freeloader backpack and his father who carried him up there. And that backpack can fit a child or young adult up to 80 pounds. So that was really important to us to get people out and hiking. Calvin mentioned the track chair. So this is a picture of an older track chair and a newer one, both in our inventory. And this was just a wonderful reminder of why we do what we do. We were able to take our older track chair, and between the Montana Bow Hunters Association and the Missoula Parks and Rec, it had been sitting for a couple of years and out of service. And they provided us with new batteries and a little tune-up. And we were able to give this 3-time Purple Heart veteran who lives way out of town this loan of a track chair. And so he called us the next day and just said, there is nowhere I can't go now. And he was so excited to be able to take his grandkids hunting in that. Similarly, we have a partnership with Cutting Fences Foundation, which is a nonprofit connecting farmers and ranchers with agriculture equipment. And they just purchased a brand new track chair that is available for loan through our inventory. So that's with somebody right now who is on a ranch, and he can go on walks with his granddaughter, he can catch his horse, he can fix fence, and do all of these things that he needs to do on that ranch. So very cool. And Calvin, was there anything else you wanted to mention as far as equipment? You kind of went through the recumbent bike and upright back and track chairs that you have in the Freedom Tracks, which I'm totally gonna try to get one of those.
Yeah, no, I think I about covered what we've got here in our inventory.
I'm happy to take any questions about any of this equipment. This is, again, just one category of our equipment that we're always adding to. And we recognize, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Molly, this is Laura. Calvin, I was going to ask, is there still the website where you can see where all the track chairs are in Wisconsin? So, you know, beyond just the one at your agency, because I know Blue Mountain State Park, I think, has one. Is that website still up and running? I can look for it if it is.
So Accessibility Wisconsin is an organization that they have a mission to have a chair in every county.
Okay.
But I know there's a lot of other organizations that have their own chairs as well. So it seems like the popularity of that has grown. I know that we've got a different organization that has 2 of them in Door County. There's one at Peninsula State Park. There's one at the Ridges in Door County. So I think there's a lot of these different organizations like Barkhausen here in Brown County that are making those available.
Okay, and I know we have one up at Indigo in Superior for that service area. So,
Mid-State has one as well, Mid-State Independent Living Center.
so we have at least 3 within our WISTEC program.
Yep.
Perfect.
That is awesome. And, you know, they're showing up in other places, like at these different parks and beaches and making it so that someone can go there and have access, which I just absolutely love. I have a question from Megan, who was wondering how we get the word out that we have access to these devices. Is Montech a household name, and who is referring people? Oh, my dream is that Montech is a household name. I tell people all the time, I don't want to be the best kept secret in Montana. That is not our intention. So we have a full-time outreach coordinator who is back on the road all the time, every week. And we are doing presentations at senior centers, schools, therapy clinics, hospitals. I'm sure I'm missing tons of different area agencies on aging. Our Voc Rehab folks get presentations. Our DD Council gets folks to refer to us. We are constantly spreading the word and never meeting that goal of being a household name, just with turnover, with distance, with all of that. But we try to have presence at different events and have these kind of trainings that are a little bit more specific. So going to our Independent Living Symposium and presenting on Adaptive Rec specifically has been a really great connection to know about these resources. Doing trainings at schools on tools related to reading and writing and dyslexia is a great way to get teachers and therapists on board with what we do. But we could probably hire 5 more outreach coordinators and still not have as much awareness as we want.
Molly, this is Calvin. That's been a barrier for us as well. And I was going to kind of mention this later with some of the barriers that I've observed in creating our program, but it seems to fit here. I've kind of been warned that the adaptive rec programs isn't like a if you build it, they will come thing. So I haven't been able to just purchase. I just assume there's such a need for this, right? There's such a shortage. And earlier in the presentation, we had a hard time coming up with a list of resources. If there's a couple available, everybody would jump all over it. But we've struggled to get the word out. So I've started writing in those grants the ability to have staff time funded just to do that outreach and promotion. With the collaboration with other organizations, I'm finding, I think at this point is kind of our best mileage. So, taking our chair to that Marinette County Wheel Hike Together event, and handing out flyers, people love it there. Having it at the Botanical Gardens, it was just sitting in our parking lot because nobody had it reserved. So, having it sit at the Botanical Gardens, that's just all promotion, so there's flyers with it. And I think we're finding that that's our best mileage is collaborative partners to help kind of spread the word on the free equipment that's available for people to use. That's where we're getting kind of our best mileage, because again, I think the independent living centers in Wisconsin here, that's the same thing. We're the best kept secret, unfortunately, and nobody likes that, but that's kind of just the way it is. So that collaboration's been huge.
And this is Laura. Yeah, WISTEC, along with our IL centers or independent living centers who we partner with, I worked for 15 years at an independent living center. That was sort of almost our secret tagline was, we are the best kept secret. And Molly and Calvin are right, that we could spend countless, full-time FTEs doing this outreach. Unfortunately, so often for an individual with disability, the focus is on, getting them access at school or in the community or at the work site. And we forget that most of us, one of the main reasons we work is to get the money to recreate. The recreation is what really drives us and gives us quality of life. But so many of the funding resources or the therapy resources are all devoted to the school work, daily living end of things. And recreation, unfortunately, often gets pushed aside. We forget that an individual with disability, they want to recreate just as much as everybody else.
Yeah, Laura, this is Calvin again. And Molly, when you and I talked last week or 2 weeks ago, I was here in training for about a year, and that's when I finally asked the question, don't people with disabilities want to do anything fun? Because the focus was all, vocational. It was all DVR, voc rehab goals, and it was, working with OTs on discharge planning and, the activities of daily living. And we need to be able to get up and get dressed independently and get ready for work and eat independently. So that was kind of the first year. And finally, I just we don't have anything cool. So that's where we started changing our focus to adding in some of this adaptive, because you're right, Laura, there, that quality of life thing, unfortunately, is an oversight. And that's why I'm so glad we had Molly come in and talk with some of the facts as well, some of the information. I think we all take that for granted. We had a great Memorial weekend, and a lot of the things that I was able to do this weekend would have been tough if I had a disability. So I'm glad that we can look at and acknowledge some of these barriers and find out what we can do to overcome them.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it too, tying into this question, is it's not just about talking, it is about hands on the equipment. When you can get on the bike, when you can try out the kayak, when you can be in it, then you have that light bulb moment of this is achievable. So these times where we can get the equipment to the person and not necessarily the person to the activity, that's the sweet spot for sure. And that is one of our challenges. That's a perfect segue to this, is that we ship everything. Here I am in Western Montana, 10 hours away in Glendive. How does somebody get, our Emma all-terrain wheelchair? They have to drive to Missoula to get it because we ship everything outside of this service area. And that is a huge challenge and makes it not equitable. And so what we're trying to do is find these ways to get more equipment to more places so that people have access. We're starting something called Montrek, where we're renting a U-Haul full of big equipment, and we're doing a loop across the state. Come and get it. Here's where we're going to be when, come and grab what we have. But we also have two programs that I really like to highlight because of that ability to get equipment to different places. One of them is called Wheels Across Montana, which was funding from 2016 from the Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation. where we partnered with community partners, which is why I have Leslie Knope on this page, because you want to find your Leslie Nopes and work with them for sure. That is incredibly helpful for all you Parks and Rec fans. Find a community partner who's excited, and we purchased 5 to 10 adaptive cycles for each of these different places. They're at a YMCA, a Parks and Rec, a community center, and I think another 2 YMCAs, where they're on our website, and you get them the same way you get all of the rest of our equipment, but they're in these little blue dotted areas. So they're in 5 different places within Montana, spread out geographically, so that somebody in Glendive just has to go up to Fort Peck to have access to this. Are we covering the entire state? We're not, but it's a start, and it's a way, hopefully, to get folks to better understand that this equipment exists and that everybody has access to it. We applied for funding for Floating Across Montana, FAM, in 2022, again from the Christopher and Dana Reeves, to expand Wheels Across Montana. And with this funding, we are in the process of identifying, it's going to be 4 sites across Montana for accessible dock attachments. I'm going to show you a video in a moment of someone accessing that dock attachment with their kayak. But in this instance, we're working with our Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks partners. And I was so glad to hear Calvin say that the DNR has a disability advisory council, because when I called Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in 2022 or 2021 actually, and said, I'm thinking about this project, can I talk to your accessibility person? And they didn't have one. So they sent me to their diversity coordinator, who was totally on board and recognized the importance of this in inclusive action. But that's the driver. We have to speak up and speak out and say this statewide network needs to be thinking about accessibility. So here we are coming in saying, I have this idea, I'm going to give you money. I just need your help putting these docks in. So let me show you the video here of Ken. And Ken is in a power wheelchair, and he is taking out his kayak from the back of his van and grabbing his paddles as well, and life jacket, of course. And then he's got a string on the end of his kayak that he ties to his wheelchair to bring down to the ramp. Our dock attachments are not going to be as amazing as this one. They are, cost is a factor, and we wanted to have as many of them as possible. So it really is going to just be this piece that you're seeing right now with the transfer bench and the rails that hold the kayak. So Ken is able to transfer onto the transfer bench, use the overhead pole, use the little arm pulleys to be able to transfer himself in and out of his kayak completely independently. And that is just really cool. That transfer bench has a slide out board, so he's able to get right in, and then the dock launch has railings to pull himself through and into the water. And I'm just really excited to have this. We don't have any of these in Montana, and to be able to throw 4 of them across the state is just really exciting, because when people see it, then they get excited about the possibility of it being elsewhere. So here he is coming back and able to lift himself back up onto that transfer bench and go all the way back to his wheelchair. And then he does the same thing and pulls the kayak back out. In order to do this, we had to crowdsource. I can't go and visit every single lake in Montana, so we created a launch site questionnaire to get information about all these different facilities and what surface is the parking lot and the path from the parking area to the dock. What's the point of putting on an accessible dock if you can't get there from the parking lot? And then we did ask people to do some measurements of different things. We found the most important measurement for this company that we're working with to be what is the distance from the top of the dock to the top of the water. And that really has been important to deciding where these docks are going to go. So again, how can we have more equipment in more places so more people can access it? So on this map, I have little blue dots where we have the WAM sites, and I have orange dots where these are in flux, but they're we are hoping to have different FAM sites at these locations across the state. So we're getting there, definitely. Okay, last section of today is going to be about state and national parks, and what does the accessibility look like within these areas that exist and are managed by our state and federal partners. And just for reference from our audience, when was the last time you visited a state or national park? And while you are doing that, I'll just note that in the chat, there's a great conversation going on about additional marketing challenges and opportunities. And I'm seeing a lot of people who have been to a state or national park in the last year, and a number within a year to 5 years ago, and some people who have never been, and that's okay. There are accessibility challenges in our areas, so hopefully we can address some of those and give you some resources on where you can find a more accessible state or national park. All right, you folks get out. I like to see that. About 65% have been to a state or national park within the last year. So the first thing I want to highlight, the most important thing, is that anyone with a disability can get a free $10 processing fee, free interagency lifetime pass that provides access to 2,000 sites that are managed by the Forest Service, national parks, BLM, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Reclamation. So excellent. We have a person watching who even worked in the national park within the last year. So I would love to, you'll have to tell me which one, Andrew. So promoting that pass is the first step. This eliminates that cost barrier that we talk about. So if we can reduce fees, because it does take possible transportation to get to these different sites, if we can reduce the fee to get into them, that's going to help matters quite a bit. I just want to highlight 3 different sites, and the first one is recreation.gov. So if anybody's used that to find a campsite or a Forest Service cabin, which we have tons of here in Montana, really, really fun. They have a great accessibility initiative where they are working on this, on making it easier to find accessible campgrounds using crowdsourced feedback, which is not my favorite thing because I don't want the onus to be on the person with a disability to tell you how inaccessible something is. That's just adding to the load that people already face, but really doing some more data collection for their campsites. So they also have a nice assistive technology guide and some different screen reader action and commands. But when I go to recreation.gov, this is different than a year ago. I am really impressed with the gains that have been made. If I go to camping and lodging, and it's going to show me places in my area, like Holland Lake Campground, another fantastic visit if you're ever here. Right there on the homepage, it gives you information about 2 accessible campsites. So when you click on it, then you can see right away which ones are more accessible than others and when they're available. And I just think good on your recreation.gov, because that did not exist a year or 2 years ago. It's a step in the right direction to make it not something you have to hunt for, but information that is right there in front of you. And then the nice thing too, when you click on that, is they do have the map, the details, and reviews. So you can hear from other people who maybe put in pictures or gave reviews on what was and wasn't accessible about that site. The National Park Service, again, does a really phenomenal job. And I'm just going to show you two sites that are very different. And I see Andrew was at Golden Gate National Recreation Area, beautiful area. And he's also telling us that you can get the federal access pass 100% free if you get it in person at the national park. Then you don't have to pay the processing fee, which is nice. So I'm going to come up to your neck of the woods here and go to St. Croix. It's close, but this again is an easy to search accessibility in national parks. What does that look like? And it gives you real-time alerts about what's going on. And it tells you that the visitor center is accessible with restrooms and a movie that has open caption and audio descriptions and assisted living devices. How great is that information? The picnic areas have accessible picnic tables and vault toilets. This is awesome. So I can make an informed decision about my visit to St. Croix. Similarly, but on a bigger scale, Montana likes to claim Yellowstone National Park. Don't tell everybody most of it is in Wyoming. We like to claim it as our own. This is on a bigger scale. So this accessibility is really impressive when we look at what's happening at Yellowstone. So it shows you pictures of the half-mile boardwalk. It talks about the access pass, and then it tells you about sign language interpreters, captioning, assisted living, audio descriptions, large print and braille. We're not just talking about physical accessibility, which I think is often the first step, but it's not the means that everything is inclusive for everybody, as Calvin mentioned earlier. So the other nice thing here is that it takes you through various places within the park. So you can plan your visit if you want to go to the lake area or the canyon area. And that just is incredibly helpful to eliminate that barrier of needing to dig for information. I'm not going to show the US Forest Service map because I want to save a little bit of time and because it is not yet at the level of the other two. So we're working on it, but stay tuned. We need more. And just a couple other accessibility guidebooks, some of the things that Calvin mentioned earlier, some resources here that are ready to be updated, but we're getting there. I did have a conversation with the National Park Service accessibility coordinator back in March. And what he told me is that they are becoming way more engaged in having access to adaptive equipment on site and partnering with disability organizations. But what they're doing a lot of is that information presentation so that people can make an informed decision about whether or not it is accessible for them. And I just found this video and I thought it was so great from this guy in Colorado, Boulder, and just through. He talked about the different features of this trail, and then he takes you on it. You have a nice, fast speed dude rolling down his wheelchair on this trail, so you can see the scale and the hazard flow and see the challenges for yourself before you go out there and experience it. And I'm glad these types of videos and resources are becoming more accessible so people can have that information at hand.
Molly, this is Laura. That video is great. I mean, that's what I personally, like if I'm going to go do a new mountain bike trail, I look to see if there's a video. I mean, I want to know, kind of anticipate what that opportunity is going to be like. And this just levels that playing field. That's great.
Totally. I just thought that was so clever and something we could all be doing in our areas for sure. I'm going to pass it back over to Calvin to talk a little bit about state parks in Wisconsin and what's happening, and then just run through a couple more resources for folks before we finish. So Calvin, go ahead and take it away.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, Molly, but I think I blabbed it all in the last section. So I think I covered most of the project stuff that we're working on. The only thing that I wanted to add, some of the stuff that we have in the works, we talked a little bit about what inclusivity means as it relates to some of these. One of the neat ideas that we're looking at is the campgrounds being accessible for chemical sensitivity. So they do a lot of nasty chemicals at times for, bug reduction and killing off weeds. We have a lot of poison ivy and whatnot. So one of the things that our council is looking at is trying to find a way, I don't know if we're going to have the ability to have them not use chemicals, but to be able to track when those chemicals are being applied. So if you're a person with chemical sensitivity, that you're aware, if that's something. Otherwise, we're finding people are using the state parks campground areas and are having reactions due to it. And the other thing, that I think is kind of neat we've done is some of the interpretive signage along the trails, solar powered type of things with the audio feedback to give you information. And I think we're seeing a little bit more of that, but I think I kind of spoiled that earlier already, Molly. I shared most of what came to mind that we're doing with the state parks, but I would certainly encourage, so our Disability Advisory Council meets quarterly. I don't think we've had public input at a meeting in probably 7 years. So if you're a person that hasn't explored the state parks, or if you've hit barriers, please share that. As a council member, I would love to hear it. Share that with your independent living centers and they can relay the information. Or, by all means, if you've got input of what can make state parks more accessible in Wisconsin, show up for the public comment period and let your voice be heard. I just find a lot of times when we're trying to create these opportunities here, I don't get a lot of feedback. So then I'm just coming up with things that I think are neat to share and, things that we've all learned here from Molly and stuff that I want to expose, but I want to make sure that we're focusing on creating opportunities based on community needs. So certainly, let your voice be heard. I know we all run into frustrations, but if we don't do anything about it, there's nothing that's going to be done for you in the future or for the next person that comes along. So speak up, let people know where you're observing these barriers, and that's how we can do more to make all of these state and national parks even better yet.
Awesome. That's perfect. Really interesting point on the chemical sensitivity too. I had not considered that. And Laura has a couple resources to share as well. So I'll give some space to Laura.
Yeah, sure. Great. I appreciate it. So I did put a link into the chat that this is National Trails Day this weekend. And so there is access to our parks free of charge. And then down at Blue Mound, there is an event that they're actually going to have access. Ability Wisconsin will be there with a track chair. I'll put that link in the chat as well. I think it's sponsored, it's listed by the Sierra Club, but that's an opportunity for this coming weekend to get out. And then I did have 2 quick flyers I was going to share about some of our events. Is it okay if I stop your screen share, Molly, quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So coming up June 15th and Friday, June 16th, down in this kind of the southeast, down in McFarland, the southeast area of the state, A&J Mobility, which is a adapted vehicle company, they have partnered to bring basically a rec event. So 2 days of recreation related activities. This is going to be free of charge. And I can include this in a follow-up email to the participants just so folks are aware of it. But they're going to have an adaptive climbing wall. They're going to have some sports associations and they're going to have track chairs there. Fishing has no boundaries. There's food, snacks, that sort of thing. But I did want to share that is coming up. And then on July 29th, our independent living center in the middle of the state, mid-state independent living, down in Wisconsin Rapids is hosting an adapted kayaking event. So these are 2 local resources that are happening here in the next couple months that would be available to everyone to participate. Just if you're not, even if you're not in the mid-state service area, you're still welcome to participate. They do ask for registration just so they know how many people are coming.
Awesome. That is so cool. I guess I could fly to Wisconsin this weekend, right? That could happen. Happy Trails Day. I think we all need to give ourselves an action step after this presentation and see if we can find a place to get outside for National Trails Day. That's so cool. A couple additional national adaptive rec resources, and you've seen on all these slides, I say some, I say a few. This is not exhaustive, this is not comprehensive, but these are just some additional places to look at to see what's happening. Laura mentioned the Trail Link by Rails to Trails, another really cool option and very easy to find. Top Wheelchair Accessible Trails by Me. They use a lot of crowdsourcing and a lot of pictures and videos. So for example, this is just less than a mile from where I am standing right now. It's Greeno Park Trail. It gives me a trail map and it shows me pictures and a description and a nice review. So really easy to get there. And I think that's what I've learned in this space, is that as much as I want to create databases of information on accessible outdoor recreation, I don't have the capacity to do that with my small staff. So I need to use some of these state and national resources, and they're doing it. They just might need the push. So they have a lot more capacity to keep those resources evergreen and to keep them up to date with the best information than I might necessarily be able to do. A couple other places to do adaptive sports, adaptive rec, different camps, different adventures. Adaptive adventures was a cool one. What I liked there was they have, oh, was that the one? That might not have been the one. Let me see. National Ability Center, was that it? I don't think that was it. Anyway, there was one of these that had special interest groups. So they had different adventures for specific groups of people. So if some of these activities can be really intimidating and really scary, especially if your injury occurred during an adaptive or during a recreation activity. So to be able to do it with people who share similar abilities as you can be really nice. And I see in the chat too, both Andrew and Laura mentioned some apps that are really great and are working really well in the accessibility space. So my next steps, my takeaways are look at these places that centralize the information and share those just like we've done today. Continue forming these relationships for collaboration, which are so hugely important. And then one thing that I didn't get to talk about, because we need a little bit more time, but for accessibility to receive a higher share of the resources that are available, then we need funders and resource allocators to recognize that accessibility is something that does or will affect each one of us. And so we need them to know that an advocate increased funding so that accessibility for people with disabilities can be advanced in ways that both complement and augment other efforts to advance access to outdoor recreation. Always, always, always finishing off with, when you start a project, let's make it universal. So having these conversations with as many people as possible and learning from each other about what works and what doesn't is hugely helpful. I want to leave some time for questions, so I will just let you know that this is my contact information. I love hearing from folks. I still need to finish up my references page, so it's all there, but it's not formatted well. So don't click on that until next week. And this is me finishing my biathlon that I try to do every year, which is skiing and shooting, and that feeling of accomplishment when you can be done with something like that or something like a 2-hour presentation is awesome. So I want to thank you all for being here, and I am happy to take some questions here at the end if there's anything anybody wants more information on. And I know Laura and Calvin would help me out with that.
Well, this is just fantastic information, and I think I just need to, go video all of our state trails and upload them to the WISTEC site. Calvin, you want to join me on that?
I would love to. And I also, since we have time before waiting for any questions to come through, there's a tool that we had considered purchasing called a HETAP, HETAP. It's a trail assessment tool. Some of the states are contracting with that company to have trails assessed. And so it will go through, it's a device that you walk through all the trails, Laura, which it would be very tough. And it spits out information of what's the average slope, you know, what's the max side slope. It measures trail width, it measures like the compactness of the trail. And ideally, then you can create a trail map or a trail sign at the trailhead, so that if you're getting to an area, you know what you're getting into, you know, so you don't get a mile into a trail just to find out there's a bunch of trees that narrow down to 24 inches wide and your mobility device can't get through, or there's a cross slope. So that's one of the, I'm working at approval from my executive director to be allowed to assess all the trails in Wisconsin. I haven't yet gotten that. I see we have one question came through. Nope, just comment.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you need any support in any of that argument. And thanks for sharing the link for that, the HETAP link. Are you guys using that in Montana?
No, I've never seen that before. That is super cool.
Because Minnesota was just asking if we were using anything. I pointed them over to you, Calvin, as part of the DNR.
Yeah, Minnesota state parks are doing that. So they're contracting, I think it's one state park a year. So that company will come in and do it for you. We've got some estimates for some of the state parks here, but there's a few states that have started doing that. Otherwise, they sell the device. It's about a $20,000 device, and then it requires, again, you got to walk all the trails and come up with the data and then figure out what to do with it from there. But pretty neat concept. It gives, you know, the users, Molly, as you said, the ability to make an informed decision before you get into it. So you know what you're getting into, or it's on their website, you know, so that you can kind of plan a trip accordingly before ever leaving your home.
Very cool.
The other thing I wanted to share, a resource I just noticed over the weekend, our libraries have a program with the DNR, so you can actually get state park passes through a lot of the libraries.
And my next action step is to contact our state group and ask when we can start our Disability Advisory Council. So you'll be hearing from me again, Calvin. Thank you to our interpreters and our captioner as well. Really appreciate having you available.
Yes, and I just wanted to wrap up and say thank you everyone for attending. We do have 4 more trainings this year, and hopefully you have that link. It will also be shared repeatedly throughout the summer. And there'll be a survey that, if all Zoom things work out, will pop up at the end of today's training, but it will also come out in an email tomorrow. We appreciate your feedback by taking that short survey. And the survey is required if you are looking for the CEUs or CRCs. And then in a few weeks, this will be archived within our YouTube channel. And I hope to see many of you back in June for our next training. And thanks again, Molly and Calvin. This was super, super great information, and I hope folks can take it and run with it.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Get outside, everybody.
Take care.